Welcome to my channel where we share scary stories. And now with Valentine's Day coming up, we figured it would be fun to share some creepy romance stories from real people. So grab your loved ones or a nice beverage. This week's theme is Valentine's Day. And our first story is The Overnight Cleaner at Hillside Mall. When I got the job as an overnight cleaner at Hillside Mall, I was just happy to finally find work. The mall had been partially shut down for renovations and they needed someone to clean the food court and upper levels between 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. Even though the place was silent, I always felt like someone was walking just a few steps behind me. As I walked in to check it, the automatic sink turned on, then the dryer, then all the toilets flushed at once. On the far wall was an old-time clock, its hands frozen at 11:35. Something about the scene unsettled me, so I quickly left. On the second floor, I paused. Had I imagined the sound before? I wasn't sure. I froze, debating whether I should answer. What if it was a homeless person who somehow snuck in? But then the voice whispered again, "Are you here to take me away?" A sob racked the unseen figure. "Don't leave me again." I pushed the door open and stepped inside. But as I continued down the hall, the crying grew louder. She had Lily's curious eyes and was wearing that same red dress. Her flesh was pale and stretched unnaturally tight over her bones. As she floated past me, I saw the gash across my face. Lily got sick and I had to bring her to the doctor. It's hard to keep a happy face when she cries for hours on end. I hope tomorrow is better. "He didn't mean to hurt me," she whispered. "He never does." Her voice was raspy and hollow, like the sound of leaves skittering across a dry, barren field. "If you come back tonight, they'll know you're not afraid anymore. And that's when they really follow you." I couldn't see anyone. The crying had stopped. And as I called out again, I noticed a small, intricately carved wooden box on the desk. I could hear Lily calling my name, but I didn't dare look back. Shaking, I opened it. But instead of the photograph, I found a worn leather diary. On the first page, I read, February 14th, 1998, "Today we brought Lily to the mall for the first time. She hasn't stopped smiling since." Each page contained heartbreaking entries detailing the life of a young mother, Sarah, her husband, David, and their 6-month-old daughter, Lily. The entries spoke of a loving family, their excitement over the new mall and how much Lily enjoyed the toy store. Once outside, Keith ushered me into his car. "Go home," he said quietly. "I'll meet you in the morning." Curiosity got the best of me and I opened it. "What did you find in that box?" he asked quietly. Inside was a faded photograph of a young girl holding a teddy bear. She had bright, curious eyes and wore a red dress. On the back, someone had written, "Lily 1998. I placed the box back on the desk, deciding to leave. It was coming from the back of the building. As I reached the end of the hall, I saw a door slightly ajar. No one knows what it was that took her, but the grief drove her parents insane. They locked themselves in the toy store and starved to death. We found them 3 days later. It was a horrible tragedy. I can't believe you found the box." Peeking through the gap, I saw a small, cluttered office. And in the corner, something resembling a rocking chair swayed gently back and forth. Down the hall, the other door was locked, so I headed toward the stairwell. I bolted out, shaken but unscathed. I finished up in the second-floor bathrooms and started cleaning up the mess hall. There were a lot of coffee cups around the trash can, so I decided to empty it. The girl in the photo stared up at me with her wide eyes. And then the most terrifying thing happened. The photograph began to shake violently. The girl's eyes seemed to glow an eerie red. I stumbled backward, knocking over a chair. Then the picture flew out of my hands and slashed across my face, leaving a thin, bloody line from my temple to my cheekbone. To my horror, it was full of sharp shards. Glass crunched under my feet. Whenever I turned around, no one was there. I blamed it on echoing footsteps. Despite Keith's warning, I took the service elevator up. The doors opened to an eerily silent hallway. And standing over me was Keith. His face was ashen. "What did you do?" he whispered urgently. My flashlight didn't do much to pierce the darkness. All I could see were 2 doors down the hall. One was clearly labeled "Staff Only," but the other door had peeling paint and no markings. Curiosity got the better of me. I tried the doorknob. It was unlocked and swung open easily. But then around 2 a.m. while I was mopping near the food court, I saw the escalator to the 3rd floor start moving on its own. It creaked slowly, like it hadn't been used in years. And then I saw movement at the top. A shape. A man? He was standing there, watching me, completely still. His silhouette never moved. I blinked and he was gone. Maybe it was a security guard checking the escalator, but it didn't seem right. I tried to radio Keith but got only static. The manager, a quiet man named Keith, handed me a keycard and said, "Don't go to the 3rd floor. It's closed off for a reason. Just clean the 1st and 2nd floors." I laughed nervously, thinking it was some kind of weird inside joke. He didn't laugh back. So that first night was a little unnerving. Later that night, I found one of the bathroom lights flickering. At this point, I wanted to call it a night, but I figured I should at least get to the third floor. Inside was a long, narrow room. My light revealed rows upon rows of cubbies with handwritten name tags on each one. As I climbed, the crying started again. It was soft, like a child. Then a voice whispered, "Who's there?" "Hello?" My voice echoed strangely in the small room. But as I turned to go, the photograph flew out of the box and landed on the floor. I don't remember much after that. The next thing I knew, I was sitting on the floor with my head in my hands. As if sensing trouble, I looked up just in time to see the girl from the photograph rise out of the desk. Then she turned and disappeared into the wall. Keith helped me up and we rushed down the stairs. As I drove home, adrenaline slowly fading into fear, I realized I still had the box with me. The last entry was dated February 22, 1998, and read, "Today was hell." The next day, I met Keith at the mall. He looked tired and defeated. I handed him the diary. "Her name was Lily, right?" I said sadly. Keith nodded. "She was just 6 months old when she died. The doctors couldn't save her." He looked me in the eyes. I quit that morning. Thanks for watching. If you like this story, stay tuned for more like it. Scary stories from real people. Story 2, The Graveyard Shift at Black Hollow Asylum. This is the second installment of Scary Stories from the Dark Side, where we read the most terrifying creepypastas from the internet and bring them to life with sound design and visuals. Today we will be reading the story titled, The Graveyard Shift at Black Hollow Asylum, by Anonymous. I got a call from a temp agency I'd signed up with while in college. They needed a night watchman, specifically for a graveyard shift position at a recently decommissioned asylum known as Black Hollow. Everything seemed normal for the first hour. I walked the halls listening for noises, checking all the doors to make sure they were locked, checking the monitors and so on. I pushed them open and they creaked loudly, making me jump. The air was stale and thick with the smell of mildew and rust. The walls were covered in graffiti and some of it was fresh, which made me feel uneasy. I glanced at my clipboard, double-checking the log. The musty odor of decay filled my nostrils, making me gag. I strained to see in the darkness, but all I could make out was a pair of stairs leading down into blackness. A single bare bulb hung precariously above, casting long menacing shadows. I stepped forward, my flashlight beam cutting through the gloom. I don't remember how long I spent wandering the asylum grounds, but it felt like an eternity. It was the creature from the asylum. All it said was, "Come back tonight. Come back tonight. Come back tonight." As the first rays of sunlight touched the horizon, I finally dragged myself away. I never looked back. "Hello," my voice echoed unnaturally in the vast space. "Is anyone down there?" Only silence answered me. But then a low guttural moan rose from the depths, sending goosebumps erupting across my skin. There shouldn't have been a basement according to the blueprints. If you enjoyed this story, please like and subscribe. Startled, I scrambled back to the door, fumbling for the handle. But it was locked. Panicked, I pounded on the door, my heart hammering against my ribs. "Help, please let me out." My cries echoed ominously within the confines of the asylum. I could feel the creature's presence closing in, its icy breath on my neck, its fetid odor suffocating me. Its raspy voice whispered in my ear, "You're new. You'll last longer than the others." Then it vanished. I walked by without much thought, but moments later, I heard a loud crash. But my efforts were in vain. The door wouldn't budge. I slumped down against it, tears streaming down my face, my body trembling uncontrollably. It had no face, just a gaping hole where it should have been. I could see the other side of the asylum through its hollow sockets. It lifted its head, revealing a twisted grin filled with sharp, jagged teeth. "Welcome to Black Hollow," it rasped, its voice like nails on a chalkboard. "We've been expecting you." Startled, I turned and rushed back to the storage room. I found the padlock on the door broken and the chain securing it lay on the ground. I swear I hadn't touched it. Fear tightened its grip on me, but curiosity overcame my apprehension. I stepped inside. I continued until I reached the end of the hallway and found that the doors at the end were also open. Walking through, I saw more graffiti, some of it clearly written within the last few days. One message stood out. Written in bright red paint was the phrase, "They scream even when there's no one left." I paused, confused. What did it mean? Did the patients escape? Were they outside the asylum screaming in the middle of the night? I couldn't imagine anyone being crazy enough to do that. And besides, the town was far away from here. At around 1:30 a.m., I was heading down a hallway when the lights flickered one by one until the whole hall was pitch black. I froze, trying to listen in the silence. Then I heard it again, slowly getting closer. I turned and ran. I could hear heavy breathing behind me. They never let me go. They never let me go. I nearly dropped the radio in shock. Was this the man from earlier? Was he trying to communicate with me somehow? Before I could respond, the transmission ended. I tried to call out, but all that came through was static. I knew I should call the police, but I was scared. Scared of what might happen if I left my post. I didn't know what it was, but I knew I had to get away. Turning around, I finally got a good look at whatever it was. Standing in the hallway was a man wearing one of the patient gowns. His head was tilted at an unnatural angle and his eyes were completely white, devoid of any color. He wasn't blinking. He just stared straight ahead at me. His mouth was open slightly as if he were about to speak. But before he could, I blinked and he was gone. Confused, I rubbed my eyes and looked around, but he had vanished. Thinking it was a power outage, I checked the breaker box, but everything seemed fine. Suddenly, I heard what sounded like footsteps in the west wing. This was a section of the asylum that had been completely closed off for years since it had a massive fire. No one was supposed to be back there. Feeling nervous, I grabbed my flashlight and headed in that direction. This place was supposedly haunted and many people who worked there had quit after only 1 or 2 nights due to witnessing strange things. Apparently, they were paying triple for this job because of how difficult it was to keep people working there. I figured it was just an old building and I really needed the money, so I took the job. It was 2007 and I was 24 years old. On my first day, I clocked in and met the day shift guard. He looked to be about 50 years old. His name was Bob. He gave me a flashlight, a walkie-talkie and then said in a very serious tone, "Listen closely, you hear me? I need you to never check the basement. The blueprints say it's sealed. Just leave it alone. Do you understand?" I thought it was a prank or a scare tactic, but I said yes anyway, laughing nervously. Bob wasn't amused. He explained if I let any of the patients out, I would be held accountable. I assured him I wouldn't do anything stupid. I logged all of this in my book and headed home for a few hours to get some sleep. My shift was set to start at midnight. I arrived early to make sure I knew where everything was, clocking in around 11:30 p.m. As I walked down the hallway, I noticed that the doors were slightly ajar. Suddenly, I heard footsteps in the hallway. That's when I heard a voice in my walkie-talkie. Static filled the airwaves followed by a woman's voice whispering frantically. At around 3 a.m., I was walking past a sealed door marked "Storage, Basement Access." The air immediately turned freezing cold, sending shivers down my spine. Terror propelled me backward, my foot catching on something on the floor. In a panic, I kicked at the door, my screams echoing through the empty asylum. At the base of the stairs, I saw something crawling on the floor. It was pale, almost translucent, like a skeleton brought to life. With a final burst of strength, I lunged for the door, bursting through it and stumbling out into the night. Later that day, I got a voicemail from an unknown number. I never did. Thank you for watching. Welcome to the most haunted hotel in the world. I'm your host. And tonight we bring you Story 3, Room 104, Welcome to the Hotel. The manager, an older woman named Grace, gave me a quick tour. Everything was pretty much empty except for one guest when I arrived, an old man in room 104. I looked up just in time to see the front desk phone ring. Concerned, I got up and walked slowly down the dimly lit hallway toward room 104. The air grew colder the closer I got, like walking underwater. What was I thinking? I turned back to the hallway, then stopped. The door had appeared unlocked. Maybe I had imagined the whole thing. I tried the knob again. Still locked. Frustrated, I slid my master key in and opened the door slowly. I knocked on the door and called out, "Mr. Williams, is everything all right?" No answer. What do I do? She sighed, exasperated. He still calls sometimes. Ignore it. It gets worse if you answer. I hung up. There was no luggage, no clothes. Nothing. But the worst part, no guest. The bed was made, the curtains drawn. Slow, wet, sticky. I turned. No one. Then I noticed something terrifying. But when I finally came to my senses, I knew I had to get out of there. I left the keys on the counter, ran out the front door and into the night. They say if you stay past sunrise, he makes you check in permanently. Behind the counter, the computer screen powered on by itself. For more spine-chilling tales of the unknown, be sure to follow for more spine-chilling tales of the unknown. Until next time, sleep well. The message read, "You're hired. Forever." It was as if the room had never been occupied. I picked up. There was heavy breathing on the other end. Then a raspy voice whispered, "There's someone in my room." I looked down. The caller ID read room 104. It was my first night as a front desk clerk at an old countryside hotel called the Pines Inn. "Don't disturb him," she said. "He stays long term. Doesn't like to be bothered." So simple. As I got to work, I read a book until around 11 p.m. when the power flickered. My heart raced. Why would the old man be calling me at this hour? Room 104 was booked to David Milner, who died in a car crash near the hotel 2 years ago. Grace must have made a mistake giving me that room. I dialed her number. I tried the doorknob. Locked. Of course it was locked. I walked over and slid the doors open. Empty. Except, my blood ran cold. Two very wet footprints were stamped into the carpet. They led out of the elevator and toward room 104. The room was freezing cold, untouched, almost sterile. I quickly shut the door and returned to the desk. Just then, the elevator dinged. I hadn't seen anyone come in all night. The phone rang. Again, I picked up. "Hello? I told you. He's not me." I checked the logbook again. She answered on the first ring. "Grace, it's me. The guest in room 104, he's dead. He's calling from beyond the grave." Then the lights flickered and went out completely. I heard the elevator ding again. Footsteps behind me. I don't know how long I stared at that message, and now, after hearing this story, neither you nor your shadow will ever want to stay at the Pines Inn.